This project was an attempt to simply learn more about solar energy. I wanted to talk to different individuals who were involved in either solar research or were utilizing solar technology for a significant portion of their projects. And so I sought out these individuals and decided to ask them about their perspectives on the growth of the solar industry, the benefits to using solar energy, any potential drawbacks that they felt solar energy had, and finally what they felt the role of the research institution, such as UC Berkeley, was in adopting or researching or driving these new technologies for the public, and if they have such a responsibility or if not. And so this film is a collection of their perspectives.
Basically, I wanted a job, some sort of occupation where I could be outside, but that would also be challenging in terms of my mind, be able to do some calculations, talk to people, so I didn't just want grunt work, and I also wanted to do something good for the environment. And it was a long time in my mind just thinking about that before I found solar, and that kind of hit all those three bases.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I was able to do a lot of physical labor, which I like, but it wasn't just meaningless or mindless work, and it was work with a purpose.
Right.
So, and that was I got into it back in 2000.
Also, as engineers, we kind of have this innate curiosity and want to be able to build things, get our hands dirty,
Mm-hmm.
work with really innovative technologies. And Berkeley's kind of a theoretical institution, so this is really a good way to get hands-on, exactly, get some practical experience building things like machine shop, composites, a lot of really interesting materials and things to work with. So it's a good experience.
And for me personally, I've always really been interested in sustainable technology and the environment, and so having the solar tacked on to the front of the name really drew me in as an aspect of a really interesting outlet of developing this technology, which may not actually become feasible for any car, but any technology that we develop and that we work with can be used in other applications as well.
Use the company's growth as an example of the industry as a whole. The company I went and worked for, Sunlight and Power, had 6 employees. I was the 6th employee. There was one person in the office. She did everything. Now they're up to 60. So in the course of say 12 years. And there are other companies. Single year, but since 2001. But on it till today, it's grown at least 10% every year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually what the numbers they say. It's over 10%, double-digit growth every year. But yeah, it's grown hugely. I mean, back then there was installing solar was still kind of a radical statement. It was very die-hard, almost always environmentalists that went solar. And today, primarily, the way we put it, no one hates the environment, but the people that go solar now are primarily looking at the bottom line, with an eye also towards doing something that makes them feel good and they're proud of it.
Well, I started in solar in 1980, so I've seen tremendous growth. In 1980, there were just a few megawatts being produced worldwide, and now there are 30 gigawatts. So is that a factor of 10,000 growth? That's pretty good, but it's taken a while. It's 33 years. So the long-range future is very bright for solar energy displacing eventually all other forms of energy.
Sometimes people simply hate the utility, and they feel like this is a way to stick it to them. They feel like they're kind of at the mercy of a monopoly,
Right.
Which is the power company. It's sometimes well placed, but actually the utility is very helpful in terms of most compelling is actually, if you think of it as an investment, is it's the only thing I could think of that is a tangible actual physical piece of property you could go out and touch and hold and be secure in. That has exceptional warranties and a rate of return in terms of your savings, what you save on electricity, that is virtually guaranteed and much higher than anything else you could get on the market. So this, in effect, you are prepaying all your electricity. And when the system does pay for itself, you then have basically a free or reduced electric bill later on in life. So it's also a matter of security in a way too.
The main rationale for using solar is that it's less expensive than the alternatives. Now there are also environmental benefits, but the environmental benefits are a little bit unclear. So if you really want to make a big impact on the world, you've got to provide people with something that is actually better than their alternative choice. And so we need to make the solar good enough that they would want it regardless of the environmental benefits.
From the perspective of the solar vehicle, one of the strong points of solar is that it's passively operating. Whenever our car is turned on, we're charging it. Clearly there's no need to go to a gas station, but also we don't even need to let it sit in the sun. We can just be driving it and it's still charging. Because of that passive operation, it's convenient to be able to design an endurance car like we have, because it's always operating whenever we're operating in the sun. And so that's, in my opinion, very convenient. And if you stretch that to a commuter car, if it ever got to that point, you park it in the parking lot at your job while you're at work and you're still charging. It's this kind of passive system, which I think gives it a lot of strengths, that it's not just off when you're not using it.
So I think there are two main benefits. One is the ability to really go off the grid, and you're not tied down to, let's say, oil prices and things like that. So when the price of the gas station, changes from $3 to almost $5, that really affects a lot of people. But if you have a solar panel on your car, for example, you pay the base price, and then all you get after that are returns. Because you no longer have to pay for gas or anything else.
Right.
And then, of course, the main benefit that I see, of course, is environmental. The fact that you aren't contributing as highly to fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. There's, of course, the base price of creating the solar panel itself, but I think that has returns quickly.
30% subsidy on solar projects. I think there still is. And PG&E does a 5-year rebate per kilowatt hour, and that tier moves as they get more and more people initiating solar projects. It used to be 15 cents a kilowatt hour. We missed that cutoff. I think ours is either 7 or 5% a kilowatt hour subsidy we get for 5 years.
Okay.
When you do that math, and we didn't take a loan out. We were very fortunate because we had our own cash, so we didn't have any really interest payments to do. It actually worked out where workers were going to make more money, not less money but not a lot, but $200 a year.
Okay.
So then the membership voted for it. So the workers in totality voted for it. So we did it mostly for the green aspect of it, and we're willing to economically. We were actually not looking at it saving us money. We just didn't want it to cost us a bunch.
Right.
From my viewpoint, I have a very particular viewpoint on this, and that is that we need to have not only very low-cost solar panels, but they should also be extraordinarily efficient. And this is a little bit different from most people in the field who are striving maybe for low cost, but ignoring the efficiency aspect, which is also very important. And others may be working toward high efficiency, paying no attention to cost. So you have to pay attention to both. Unfortunately, most of the research funding has been directed to one or the other, and neither is sufficient. You need to have both. And so this is an area in which I find myself somewhat at odds with some of the federal.
As well as if you look at it on a cost per watt, solar is still more expensive than gasoline or natural gas right now. But innovation can help that as time goes on. But I think a more fundamental problem that people will cite about solar power is that it's not consistent necessarily. I mean, it will work when the sun is out, but if it's a cloudy day, you might not get the promised, 3 kilowatts that the array on your home is supposed to give. So there are some inherent problems with saying that this is completely solar powered, because if you have a cloudy day for 3 days, our battery pack is drained, we can't run anymore. So there's a lot of problems like that, where nothing could be 100% solar powered. Only extreme cases like with what we're building. But solar power is a very good augment to other systems.
Right, and the solar panels that we have are fairly efficient. They're like 22% efficient, maybe a little bit higher. And even with that, we only generate 1.2 kilowatt hours. So, kind of what you'd use to run a hairdryer or a microwave or something. And so we really focus on the aerodynamics as well, to make it feasible to run. And so it's not a very practical car. There's a single driver, the space is fairly cramped. So to kind of scale that up to something like a normal car that has a significantly higher drag would mean you need a very large area of solar panel array. Or you need to go to something like another technology like gallium arsenide that is significantly more efficient, but then again the cost is so much higher.
What you do, what your electrical needs are, what your capital protocol, what your cash flow is. If you're a struggling business to make payroll, it's not going to make sense for you to go you may want to do a solar panel, but you can't really, you're not in a position to do it. That's what I was, not all, we were fortunate that we were in a position, a cash position that would make sense.
Okay.
It wouldn't have made sense to us 20 years ago, because where are we going to get that money?
Yeah.
And how are we going to pay that back?
This final question was inspired by Professor Nader's work on the barriers to thinking new about energy, and specifically the disconnect between large research institutions and the general public. And oftentimes the general public is confused when these large institutions who proclaim to be doing all this groundbreaking research are not even utilizing any of the technologies that they are espousing. So the question I posed to these different individuals was whether or not research institutions like UC Berkeley have a responsibility to either be a kind of beacon or role model for utilizing and driving innovation and uptake on these new alternative energy technologies.
It's not a moral question, you should do this and you shouldn't do that. It's just a question of provide people with something that they want, and that is better than the alternative.
So you might argue
is that a moral problem? Does she perceive that as a moral problem? They're doing research, but they're not actually using the stuff themselves?
Well, I feel it's a issue of public perception more so than anything, where they're kind of saying such and such place, they say oh, this is so, and they're making all these gains, but then they don't even use it, and they perceive that as a problem of even adopting this technology further.
I would say the bigger problem is that many breakthroughs are trumpeted that actually are not breakthroughs.
Okay.
So you've got to be very wary of your publicity releases, and many silly things are promoted as being big breakthroughs, but people in the know that they're not big breakthroughs. But the general public, they are sort of force-fed.
So I think in an ideal case, of course, UC Berkeley should be some kind of a model and adopt more things like solar power panels on the roof and things like that. I think the main problem with it, especially for a public university like Berkeley, is the fiscal crisis that we're currently going through. Puts a limit on the amount that we can spend, and we're already cutting back in so many aspects of the budget that it's not something that's going to be easily passed through to say we want to install these solar panels, but there's going to be this
ways to get a hold of solar panels that don't have the upfront cost, but you still have a solar panel on the roof of your building. You're just paying someone else for it rather than the power company. Those kind of solutions might be something that would be interesting for the university to look into because of the fiscal crisis and things like that. But yeah, based on the distribution of money that the university provides for different programs, I would often find it difficult to see them upfronting billions of dollars to retrofit the buildings. Although I think it would be an impressive sight to see, and kind of a reputation that Berkeley could push with that.
Right.
it all depends on who they're accountable to, where they get their money from, and what their obligation is with that money. I'm all for solar. I'm biased. I'm in the industry, but I try to look at it in an unbiased fashion, and that is, no, I don't think they should adopt solar if it is a huge sacrifice. If it, for example, the rooftop requires significant engineering and it's an expensive install, and a lot of these government jobs, if UC would be, you have to pay prevailing wage. It should be, I mean, if they're an institute of higher education. If they can demonstrate that what they did was a wise choice. But if they just put up a very expensive, token system, it's just a token that costs twice as much as what I install a system on a household for, per watt. I think they'll just end up being criticized, and people will, some people will be happier for it, but some people will just say, hey, look, this makes no sense. And that will be the picture that remains in people's minds, that, well, solar is this expensive thing that, universities can mess around with because they're not, accountable to, it's not a household or it's not a business to do it, and they should publicize it. I mean, I'm all for people making even a sacrifice if that's part of their value system. It's a private university, and they decided that this is what they want to spend money on, and they're upfront about what it costs and what the
Universities
decisions
should
are.
inform themselves and be cognizant of any type of energy solution, because there's a lot of them out there that purport to be green. They have their own constituencies too. What are they? I mean, they have their customers, which would be you, because you pay tuition. They have their endowment people that they have to keep happy. And so, again, I don't know, it's our mission. See, it's weird for us because it works into who we are. And, I don't know, Berkeley's mission is probably just to provide, kids with great university education. And I certainly would hope that they would do, I think it's more worthwhile if they're spending their money on the curricula to teach it than to have some panels up on a building that people wouldn't see. If indeed you're trying to espouse that particular methodology, having classes on it where people are getting actually informed on it, and the drawbacks and the positive nature of it, where the different alternative energy, systems are going, makes more sense to me than if you can do both, great, but if I had my choice in your world, teaching kids is where you want to go.